A newlywed couple had just arrived in Las Vegas for their honeymoon. Excited and a little weary from their journey, they checked into a suite at one of the city's well-known hotels. But the moment they stepped through the door, something felt off. It wasn't anything they could see at first. It was something they could smell. A foul, lingering odor clung to the air, subtle at first, but quickly turning stomach-churning. It wasn't just musty or stale, it was wrong. The husband furrowed his brow, exchanged a look with his wife, then walked over to the room phone and dialed the front desk. He asked to speak directly with the manager. When the manager came on the line, the husband kept his voice calm but firm. "There's a terrible smell in our room. We just checked in, but we'd really appreciate a different suite." The manager sounded genuinely apologetic, his tone strained. "I'm very sorry, sir, but we're completely booked tonight because of the big convention in town. There isn't a single suite left." Sensing the man's frustration building, the manager quickly offered an alternative. "Let me treat you and your wife to lunch. Any restaurant you'd like, it's on the house. And while you're out, I'll send someone from housekeeping to your room immediately. We'll get that odor taken care of." The husband accepted, albeit reluctantly. The couple decided to make the most of the situation, heading out into the bustling midday sun to enjoy a meal and temporarily escape the unpleasant stench. A little over an hour later, after a relaxing lunch, they returned to their suite. But as soon as they opened the door, the odor hit them like a wall. It was still there, heavy, rancid, unchanged. The husband clenched his jaw, picked up the phone again, and called the manager a second time, this time more forceful. "The smell is still here. Nothing's changed." The manager, now clearly distressed, promised to do more. "Sir, we'll try to find another room for you at a different hotel. Give me a moment." He hung up and frantically dialed hotel after hotel along the strip, his voice growing more and more strained with each rejection. Every room, every suite, every available space was completely sold out. The entire city was booked solid for the weekend. After exhausting every option, the manager called the husband back. "I'm so sorry. We've contacted every hotel within reach, but there's nothing available tonight. Please allow us to clean the room again. We'll do a much deeper clean, thorough top to bottom. I'll send the head of housekeeping this time. I promise we'll handle it." The husband looked at his wife. They had planned to go sightseeing anyway, maybe try their luck at the casino. Reluctantly, they agreed to give the hotel staff 2 more hours to fix the problem. As soon as the couple left, the manager personally led the housekeeping team back to the suite. Determined now, they turned the place inside out. They combed every inch of the room. The bathroom scrubbed spotless, the closets empty, drawers, vents, behind the TV, nothing. Still, the smell lingered, thick and putrid. They stripped the bed of all linens, replaced them with brand new sheets. New towels were brought in. The curtains were taken down and replaced entirely. They deep cleaned the carpet. Every surface, every corner, Every object was sanitized with the strongest chemicals they had on hand. The room sparkled, but something still felt wrong. 2 hours later, the couple returned. The air had a crisp note of cleaning product now, but beneath it, the same rancid, offensive scent clawed its way through. It was still there. The husband had had enough. Frustrated and furious, he rolled up his sleeves. If no one else can figure this out, I'll find it myself. With determination and disgust in his eyes, he began tearing the room apart. He yanked open drawers, flipped chairs, inspected every corner the staff had supposedly cleaned. Then he turned to the bed. Grabbing the top mattress, he heaved it off the box spring with a grunt. And that's when he found it. Pressed tightly between the mattress and the box spring, hidden in plain sight, was the lifeless body of a woman. Decomposing. The source of the smell. The reason nothing worked. The horror had been beneath them all along. My wife and I were on our honeymoon in Hawaii, Oahu to be exact. It had been paradise, sun warming our skin, waves whispering at the shore, and the two of us lying together on the soft sand without a care in the world. We were sitting on the beach when my wife stood up and said she was heading to the bathroom. I nodded, eyes closed, breathing in the ocean breeze. But when she came back, her face was different, tight, uneasy. Her smile was gone. She leaned in close, voice lowered to a whisper. There was a man. He was watching me. I opened my eyes, startled. She went on. He stared at me the whole way into the bathroom, and when I tried to leave, he stepped in front of the door. He didn't say anything, just stood there like he was trying to block me from leaving. My heart dropped. How did you get out? 2 other people walked up, heading in. He moved out of the way then, she said, visibly shaken. I immediately looked around. Do you see him? Is he still here? She scanned the beach and shook her head slowly. He's gone. We didn't waste time. Our hotel wasn't far, just a short walk from the beach. So we gathered our things and left, moving quickly but trying not to seem panicked. Along the way, we spotted a police officer patrolling the boardwalk. We approached him and told him what had happened. He nodded seriously, asked a few questions, and promised to keep an eye out. Back at the hotel, we rinsed the salt and sand off and tried to reset our mood. The unease still lingered, but we didn't want it to ruin our night. We dressed up and headed out to a nice seafood restaurant. White tablecloths, candlelight, the works. After dinner, we wandered the nearby streets, exploring the little shops and watching the ocean under moonlight. By the time we got back to our room, it was close to midnight. We kicked off our shoes, got ready for bed, and began winding down. Just as I was about to turn off the lights, knock, knock. A sudden knock at the door. I froze, exchanged a glance with my wife, and walked cautiously to the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw a man outside, wearing a maid's uniform. I opened the door just a crack. Before I could say a word, he shoved forward, trying to push his way in. My reflexes kicked in, and I pushed him back, planting my foot against the doorframe. "What are you doing?" I snapped. He kept his eyes fixed on me. "I left something in the room earlier," he said calmly. "Just need to grab it real quick." His voice was too even, too rehearsed. "We had the Do Not Disturb sign up all day," I told him. That's when I noticed it. He wasn't looking at me anymore. His eyes were locked on my wife, standing frozen a few steps behind me. And then she screamed, "That's him! That's the man!" I turned to look at her, confused, and in that instant, he lunged. His hand slammed against my throat, slamming me back into the door. I gasped for air as his other hand reached behind his back. Steel glinted in the hallway light. A knife. He started swinging, erratic, wild, but determined. I tried to hold him back, my strength fading fast. Then, crash! My wife, shaking but furious, grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and brought it down on his head with everything she had. The man staggered, dazed. The knife clattered to the floor. The hallway exploded in noise. Doors opened, people spilled out. One woman started screaming uncontrollably, her voice cutting through the air like a siren. The chaos surged as guests yelled, gasped, crowded around. Someone pulled the attacker off me. Someone else called the front desk. I stumbled to my feet, still choking, still trying to breathe. The police arrived within minutes, so did hotel security. Blue and red lights painted the walls as they cuffed the man, dragged him out. We gave our statements, our voices still shaking. Several other guests had seen parts of what happened and confirmed our account. It turned into a spectacle, guests crying, hotel staff rushing to manage the scene. And yet, in the center of it all, we just stood there, silent, holding each other, shaken, but alive. The detectives asked us everything: what time we got in, what he said, whether we'd seen him earlier that day. That's when it sank in. He wasn't just trying to get into the room. He wasn't trying to rob us. He was trying to her. We never learned exactly what his plan was, but standing there, staring at the bloodied knife on the carpet, we didn't have to. Whatever it wasn't random. He had followed us from the beach, had waited, had dressed up as a staff member, had knocked on our door like he belonged there. And he must have been insane to think he could pull something like that off in a public hotel in the middle of the night. Insane or desperate. Either way, we were just glad we survived. But ever since that night, even the sound of a soft knock on a door makes my blood run cold. It was me, my wife, and our 2 kids crammed into the car and making the long haul from New York all the way down to Florida. We were heading to Disney, something we'd been planning for months. The kids were buzzing with excitement for days. But at that moment, they were both sound asleep in the back seat, their heads slumped against pillows and window glass. We were in Georgia at the time, almost there, just miles from crossing into Florida. It was late, around 11 o'clock at night. I'd made up my mind to finish the drive that night. No point in shelling out extra cash for a hotel when we were so close, right? My wife had dozed off hours ago. The car was quiet, just the low hum of tires rolling over asphalt and the occasional rustle from the back seat. I kept the ride smooth, steady, careful not to hit any bumps or swerve too hard. The highway stretched in front of me, long and dark and empty. Barely another soul on the road. And then, in the distance, I saw something. 2 faint red lights blinking in the horizon. Not the sharp strobing of police lights. No, these were slower, more deliberate, like distress signals, SOS lights. I eased off the gas and leaned forward, squinting. As I crept closer, the outline of a car began to materialize, parked dead center in the middle of the road, blocking both lanes. There were 2 orange cones placed neatly on either side of it, one on each side of the lane. The SOS lights flashed from the pavement in front, casting a dull red glow against the underside of the car. My stomach twisted. Something felt off. I slowed the car to a crawl. The road was too narrow to go around. There was no shoulder, just forest on both sides, and not a light from any house or business in sight. We were deep in nowhere. Then, as I got even closer, 2 figures appeared. They stepped out from behind the car, hoods up, silhouettes heavy against the red lights. Both men, both moving slowly toward my vehicle. I felt my breath hitch. Every instinct screamed no. I shifted the car into reverse and gently began backing up, tires crunching against the pavement as I prepared to get the hell out of there. One of the men kept walking forward, straight toward my driver's side window. He got close enough that I could see his eyes, dark and unreadable beneath the hood. I cracked the window just slightly, just enough to hear what he had to say. "Need help?" I asked cautiously, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned down, eyes locked with mine. "Yeah," he said, "open the door." The way he said it wasn't a request. It was quiet, blunt, like an order. Every hair on my neck stood up. I immediately rolled the window back up, and that's when I saw him reach. His hand slid into his hoodie pocket, slow and smooth. I didn't wait. I threw the car back into drive and slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched, kicking up sparks as I tore forward, straight over one of the cones, crushing one of the blinking SOS lights beneath the bumper. I swerved around their car, the mirror clipping the edge of their front bumper as we sped past. The red lights vanished behind us into the dark, swallowed by the night. My heart was pounding. Everyone else in the car was still asleep, but I knew something was very wrong back there. About a minute after we escaped their makeshift roadblock, I saw something in my rearview mirror, a pair of headlights. They were coming up fast, too fast. My hands tightened on the wheel. My heart was already racing, but now it kicked into overdrive. The headlights were gaining ground, eating the distance between us. My wife stirred in her seat, her voice groggy and confused. "Why are you driving so fast? What's going on?" I kept my eyes on the road and said in a low, firm voice, "Don't panic. Don't say anything loud. Just stay calm. I think we're being followed." Her breath caught. "What?" The headlights behind us began flashing, bright beams strobing into the back seat, lighting up the silhouettes of my children who had just started to stir. Then, pop, a sharp, violent sound. The entire car jolted. I gripped the wheel with both hands, trying to keep control. The steering felt looser, slippery, unstable. I could feel the drag pulling me slightly to one side. "Something's wrong," I muttered, trying not to show how terrified I was. Then another pop. The sound of tearing rubber, louder this time. The car jerked hard. The rear end dragged heavily as I fought to keep it straight on the road. "Call 911, I told my wife, my voice hard now, right now. She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking. "What do I say?" "Tell them everything. We're in Georgia, heading southbound. We're being chased. Our tires are gone. Tell them everything." By now, the kids were fully awake, crying. My daughter was sobbing. My son clung to the back of my seat, asking what was happening. I kept the car going, whatever speed I could manage, despite the rear tires dragging like anchors. And then, bang! The car behind us rammed into our trunk. My wife screamed. The phone tumbled from her hands and landed between the seats. I clenched my teeth, knuckles white around the steering wheel. "Hold on!" I shouted. My wife scrambled for the phone, her voice now rising to a panic as she shouted into it, "We're being attacked! They hit us!" The kids were wailing. It felt like the end. I truly thought we weren't going to make it. I pictured the car spinning off the road, flipping into the ditch, headlights dying out in the trees. And then, like a crack in the darkness, a siren. Faint at first, then growing. Flashing red and blue lights surged into view behind the chasing car. I almost couldn't believe it. A police cruiser barreling down the road behind us like a guardian out of nowhere. The car chasing us, they saw it too. They swerved sharply, veering off the highway onto the exit ramp we happened to be passing at that very moment. Tires squealed, brake lights flared. The police car didn't hesitate. It followed them straight down the ramp, siren wailing louder as it disappeared into the trees. I slowed the car and pulled over onto the shoulder, my arms trembling from adrenaline. We sat there for a moment in stunned silence, the car quiet except for the sound of my children sobbing in the back. I reached over, gently took the phone from my wife, and spoke directly to the dispatcher. I told them everything, from the fake roadblock, to the hooded men, to the tire blows and the chase. While we waited, I stepped out to check the damage. Both back tires completely shredded. It didn't take a detective to figure it out. These weren't blowouts from overuse or debris. These had been shot. I repeated that to the officer on the phone. Roughly 10 minutes later, another squad car pulled up behind us, lights still spinning. A moment later, a AAA tow truck rolled in just behind them. The officer stepped out and approached our car. His face was tight with concern, but there was something else there too. Relief. He said, "You're not gonna believe this, but we got 'em." I blinked. "What?" "The two men," he said. "They've been caught." Turns out someone else had stumbled upon their little trap earlier in the evening. They'd been driving a different route, but came across the exact same fake setup. Cones, lights, the car blocking the road. Only that person didn't stop. They turned around in time, drove to safety, and immediately called the cops. That tip-off had been enough to put local patrols on alert, and by some miracle, they'd arrived just in time. When my sister was in her 20s, she went on vacation with her now husband. One of their destinations was the island of St. Martin, a tropical paradise, all sunshine and soft ocean breezes. They'd rented a car for the trip so they could explore at their own pace, off the beaten path, away from the usual tourist traps. One afternoon, they were out doing some sightseeing. The route they chose that day was a winding side road, far removed from the resorts and beach towns. No buildings, no people, no signs of civilization. Just open stretches of land, a few trees here and there, and wild crops lining the road. My sister said it was scenic, sure, but it also felt dead, as if the road led nowhere important. It was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl if you sit with it long enough. They had been driving for a while when they came upon something strange. There, at the edge of the road, poking out from the tangled crops, was the rear end of a car. It looked like it had crashed, or maybe swerved off the road, and from the angle, you could barely tell if it had been abandoned or just badly parked. As they pulled closer, my sister saw the full thing. It was a small, boxy vehicle, neon blue, though the paint had rusted and peeled so badly it looked more brown than blue in places. No brand badge, no plates, just sitting there, like it had been waiting. My sister's husband brought their car to a slow stop. He narrowed his eyes at the wreck ahead and then turned to her. "Stay in the car," he said. She watched as he stepped out cautiously and walked toward the strange vehicle. He circled around it, peering through the windows one by one, looking for any sign of movement. Nothing. But then she saw him freeze. He was looking down now, toward the bottom of the car. A moment passed, then he flinched back sharply, like something had startled him. Her heart skipped. She jumped out of the car. "What is it? What's wrong?" He didn't answer, just waved her over urgently. When she got to him, they both crouched down, slowly, carefully, their eyes scanning underneath the rusty vehicle. And that's when she saw it. Two grown men, grown, muscular, filthy, lay crouched beneath the car. Each one clutched a long, glinting knife in hand. And between them, sprawled motionless in the dirt, was a third figure. A body. Bloody, limp, twisted in a way no living person should ever be. My sister gasped, her breath caught in her throat, her entire body locked up, paralyzed by the sheer wrongness of it all. But her husband didn't freeze. He moved, fast. He grabbed her by the arm and shoved her backward, guiding her at full speed toward their car. Her feet barely touched the ground as he practically dragged her across the gravel. "Get in the car," he barked. She stumbled into the passenger seat, heart hammering in her chest, hands trembling as she fumbled with the door. She looked up, and the two men were no longer under the car. They were standing now, out in the open, watching, expressionless, silent. But their eyes followed every movement. Her husband dove into the driver's seat, jammed the keys into the ignition, and slammed his foot down on the gas. Tires spun, dust sprayed. The car jolted forward and tore down the road, faster than either of them had driven all trip. My sister kept looking back through the rear window, waiting, dreading, half expecting to see that neon blue car pulling onto the road behind them. But it never did. Still, they didn't stop, not until they saw the first flicker of civilization. A gas station, a few houses, a grocery store sign lit up in the distance. Only then did they pull over, both of them breathing heavy, scanning every direction to make sure they hadn't been followed. Then they called the police. They described everything: location, vehicle, the two men, the body, the weapons. The operator assured them someone would be dispatched, but by the time they hung up, the damage had already been done. Neither of them likes to talk about it now. Not really. Every time the topic comes up, I can see them get uncomfortable. Their posture stiffens, their eyes darken. It's like their minds return to that moment, crouched beside a bloodied corpse, under a rusting car in the middle of nowhere. So we try not to bring it up around them anymore. But I can tell my sister's never been quite the same since. She still smiles, she still laughs, but something in her eyes changed after that day. Something that never came back. I was 16 that summer. School had just let out, and the days ahead felt like freedom. That year, our grandparents were treating the whole family to a cruise. It was a Royal Caribbean trip headed for Florida and the Bahamas, and it felt like the biggest adventure I'd ever been on. There were a lot of us: my two brothers, my sister and her boyfriend, my parents, my aunt and uncle, two cousins, and of course, my grandparents. It was like our entire family tree had boarded the ship. I spent most of the time hanging out with my older brother, Rob. He was 20 and probably the coolest person I knew back then. We weren't technically allowed to room together. It was against cruise policy. But we'd told the staff our dad was staying with us. No one checked. One night, Rob and I went to the ship's nightclub. I wasn't supposed to be there. Minors weren't allowed inside, but I'd snuck in using someone else's ship ID. The place was dimly lit, pulsing with blue and purple lights, music thumping through the floor. At first it was fun, new, exciting. But then, as I scanned the room, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. There was a man sitting against the far wall, middle-aged, dressed like he didn't belong in the club at all. He was older than anyone else there, his posture too stiff, too still, and he was staring at me. I tried to ignore it at first. Maybe it was a coincidence. But as I moved around the club, changing spots, blending with different groups, his gaze followed. Every time I turned, his head would slowly rotate, keeping me in his line of sight. It wasn't subtle, it was deliberate. Something about the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. I felt exposed, like he wasn't just watching, but studying me. I couldn't stay there. I turned and left the club without telling Rob, needing to put distance between myself and that man. As I stepped outside the club into the open bar area, I breathed a little easier, until I saw my sister and her boyfriend sitting nearby at the bar. Grateful for a familiar face, I made my way over and sat with them, trying to act normal. We chatted casually, but my nerves didn't settle. My eyes kept scanning the room. And then I saw him again. He was there, now seated across the room from the bar, as still as ever, watching me just like before. His stare was unwavering, cold, unreadable, not even pretending to look elsewhere, just locked on. I quickly turned away, pretending I hadn't noticed. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Should I tell my sister? Should I say something? I don't know why I didn't. Maybe I thought I was overreacting. Maybe I didn't want to cause a scene. But instead of speaking up, I got up. I mumbled something and left the bar, walking fast, maybe too fast, trying to get back to my room. The stateroom hallways were long and eerily quiet at night, lit only by faint overhead lights that buzzed softly. My sandals slapped against the carpet, too loud in the silence. Every few seconds, I glanced over my shoulder. No one. But the feeling didn't go away. It felt like something was behind me, just beyond my line of sight, never seen, but always there. I reached the room and slipped inside, shutting the door fast and locking it behind me. My pulse was still racing. The lights inside felt too bright after the hallway. Safe. At least for now. I couldn't shake the thought. That man, his face, the stillness in his posture, the way he moved without ever really moving. Something about him felt wrong. Not just creepy, but dangerous. A sudden knock on the door made me jump. My heart caught in my throat as I stepped toward it, slowly, quietly. I leaned into the peephole and exhaled. It was Rob. I unlocked the door and let him in, trying not to show how shaken I still felt. I didn't say anything about the man, not yet. And for the rest of that night, everything was normal. Until the next night, late, when I saw him again. Later that night, around 1 a.m, my brother Rob and I went with my sister and her boyfriend to one of the restaurants on board. It was one of those late-night spots that stayed open for the insomniacs and night owls drifting around the ship. The place was quiet, dimly lit, and gave off that eerie emptiness you only feel in big spaces after hours. Everyone else was wide awake and in good spirits, talking and laughing like it was still the middle of the day. But I was exhausted. The long day and everything that had happened the night before was weighing heavy on me. So I told them I was going to call it a night. They waved me off, still deep in conversation, and I left the restaurant alone. The ship's hallways were even quieter than before. Just the low hum of engines and the soft clinking of distant silverware echoed faintly through the walls. The overhead lights had been dimmed for the night, casting a soft amber glow down the empty corridor. When I turned the corner into our stateroom hallway, I slowed down. Something was wrong. The door to our room, it was cracked open, just a couple of inches, enough to see that the light inside was on. I froze. I knew we'd shut that door when we left, fully. There was no mistaking it. We hadn't called for room service, and even if we had, no staff would be there at this hour. My heart started pounding. I moved toward the door slowly, carefully, barely breathing. Every instinct told me to run, but I had to know what was happening. With one trembling hand, I gently pushed the door open. The room looked undisturbed. I stepped inside, inch by inch. No one. I checked the bathroom. Empty. Everything was exactly where we'd left it. Our bags, Rob's clothes on the chair, the tangled bedspread I hadn't bothered to make. Nothing had been touched. I let out a shaky breath and told myself maybe Rob had come back for something, his wallet maybe, and just forgot to close the door. That was the only explanation that made sense. So I let it go. I climbed into bed and tried to relax, letting the hum of the ship lull me to sleep. But at some point, deep in the night, I woke up. Not from a sound, from a feeling. Something was brushing lightly against my face, soft, hesitant. A hand. Still caught between sleep and wake, I mumbled, "Rob, knock it off," and reached up to push it away. But then I turned my head, and through the faint shadows of the cabin, I saw something that didn't make sense. Rob was in his bed, still sleeping, and someone else, someone tall, was standing over me. I opened my mouth and let out the most blood-curdling scream I've ever made in my life. Rob bolted upright. In a blur, he reached for the lamp and flicked it on. The warm glow filled the room, and standing right next to me, inches from my bed, was him. The man from the nightclub. That same blank, expressionless face. That same stare. Rob didn't hesitate. He lunged forward and tackled the man to the ground. Fists flew, the mattress shook, the man fought back, but I joined in, adrenaline flooding every inch of me. We overpowered him together. Barely a minute passed before loud, frantic knocking hit the door. My parents. They burst into the room, confusion instantly turning to horror as they saw what was happening. My dad leapt into action and pinned the man down while Rob and I caught our breath, trembling. We called the ship's customer service center. Security was sent up immediately. 2 uniformed men who didn't ask many questions. They restrained the man and hauled him out of our room and down the corridor. They told us he'd be kept in the ship's holding cell for the remainder of the cruise. We never saw him again. I don't know what happened to him after that. Maybe they handed him over to the authorities when we docked. Maybe something worse. All I know is that moment changed me. The feeling of waking up to a stranger standing beside you, someone who followed you, watched you, entered your room in the middle of the night, and reached for your face, that stays with you. Even now, years later, I can't bring myself to go on another cruise. Just the thought of those narrow stateroom halls and locked doors makes my chest tighten. I used to love the sea. Now, I can't look at it without remembering him.